The Mayo experience.
That Mayo experience. That Mayo experience. That Mayo experience. Experience.
Welcome to another edition of the Dog or Pass podcast. This for UFC Fight Night Moscow. Mark Hunt versus Alexei Oleinik. We've got a bunch of Russian guys on a card, and it seems like everyone knows all of the answers. And this kind of terrifies me because I'll bring in my co-host, Mr. Cody Saftic here, who, let's be honest, Russia, you know, big numbers attached to people. Crazy shit happens in these situations.
Yeah, for sure. And also, you think, well, you know what? It's a UFC card. This reminds me a lot, bear with me here. This reminds me a lot of like King of the Cage. King of the Cage, one of the most reputable names in the game, right? Been along forever. Some of the biggest fighters in MMA history got their start on King of the Cage events. As someone who's promoted MMA shows, King of the Cage is just like a name, dude. You just license out the name. If you're in Minnesota, you're in Iowa, or you're in Lithuania, it does not matter where you are. You just license out the King of the Cage brand name. You have your card, which you put together, and you get to slap this on there. Essentially what this is an M1 card. In fact, the M1 wouldn't have quite this many international talent guys. They'll usually have 2, maybe 3 Americans per show. So this is either a really stacked M1 show, or basically like an ACB show. With a UFC, we want to come to Russia, you put the show together, you let us know a couple guys you want to go fight these Russian killers, we'll set the guys up, and hey, we'll slap UFC across it. So essentially we're getting M1 Global Moscow featuring Mark Hunt in the main event. But, you know what? A fun card. A free card, a fun card, early card, which we all love because you can get on with your night afterwards. And unfortunately, it's probably we're on the same page card because a lot of these guys are big-ass favorites.
I don't know if the Russians eat apple pie, but hopefully during this we will find out, or we will be able to unpack who will shit in the apple pie this coming weekend.
Been thinking a lot about that, actually. I don't think on this card it's a case of who is going to shit in the apple pie. I think on this card it's more of a case
which judges are held for ransom.
I didn't even think about that one, Paul. I was going in the direction of which one of these fighters is being paid to shit in the apple pie. Who is paying for this shit? And hopefully that is one of the fights that I avoid for DraftKings.
Yeah, 100%. All right, let's, before we actually get into it, I forgot about this. I guess Nicky Noodles, I'm not sure if the money has went into your account yet. It is coming. Don't get us wrong. We are not here lying to you. The $20 is coming your way. We've got, last week's winner is James 7187. Congratulations. Just wait in the queue with our boy Nicky Noodles. The money will end up in your account. We're good on it. Ask all the other winners before the money does show up. And this week, we're going a little bit off the beaten path in terms of the prize that you have. In the comment section here on YouTube, tell us which last name on this card is the hardest to pronounce. Completely random draw. And then you, like Nicky Noodles and James 7187, could be added to the queue to get your money. But without further ado, let's get into the action. We have your boy, Mark Hunt, taking on Alexei Oleinik. Mark Hunt is 8,600 on DraftKings, and Alexei Oleinik is 7,600. This one seems kind of simple. Projections are showing like this fight is not going the full 5-round distance. You have 2 heavyweights that probably... Mark Hunt, I guess, has went the distance with Bigfoot in a fight that nobody thought was going to go the distance. But for the most part, like, I think if this fight gets into rounds 4 and 5, like, these guys are going to be tired.
But if they're tired, even more reasoning that it would probably go the distance.
Yeah,
right?
Maybe. You know, it's not rocket science. Mark Hunt either lands one of those massive strikes that has made him not a star, but a household name in the hardcore MMA circles.
That's the definition of a star to me, buddy.
And Alexei Oleinik, the guy's tricky. If he can get you to the ground, doesn't have greatest wrestling, but if he gets you to the ground, He's got some crafty submissions from weird positions. Ask Junior Albini, like that one still stinks, to be perfectly honest.
Ask Victor Pesta, ask any of the other 50 guys he's submitted in his career. The guy gets a hold of you. The boa constrictor is his name. Like, talk about a guy with a very appropriate nickname is Alexei Oleinik, who he gets a hold of you. He did the same thing in Miracle Crow Cup.
Mm-hmm.
But gets a hold of your neck, neck cranks you, he Ezekiel chokes you, whatever. He's got freakish USSR strength on him. Avoid the ground with Alexei Oleinik.
Basically, like on the feet, massive disparity in talent here. Like Mark Hunt is way better, way crisper. It has much better control of range. On the ground, obviously, Alexei Oleinik, that's his world. Oleinik throws really sloppy, kind of, just kind of bombs on you type of strikes to set up scrambles so that he can get the fight to the ground. It's hard not to like Mark Hunt, but I think you want both sides of this fight card. I would lean towards Mark Hunt to get the job done in this spot, but Oleinik is the type of guy who finds that apple pie, and he knows how to shit in it. We've seen it many times in the past, and his submission skills are so dangerous that he's never completely out of it. Until in round 3, he's pretty much out of it because he's dog tired and broken. But I like Mark Hunt. I think Mark Hunt gets the job done. But like, if you're making lots of lineups, like you just want tons of exposure to this fight. I think I'm not too worried about the risk of this going 5 rounds and just being a complete fall over heavyweight fight. There is a fight on this card that we'll get to a little bit later that I feel kind of like that about, though.
Well, Alexei Oleinik redefies the saying, choke the shit out of somebody, because he chokes the shit right out of them into the pie, man. That is what he does. He just gets submissions from weird, crafty angles. He's obviously a very strong individual. He obviously has a submission game pat. It's not as if he's one of these submission guys that's a former ADCC champ. He's not a Vinny Magalesh. He's not a Fabricio Verdum. He's not going to likely lock up an armbar from guard. He's not going to throw up a triangle. He's not throwing up any go-go platas or omoplatas. He's not super flexible. He's a bread and butter, strong grappler, compact, very strong. He wants a head and arm choke. He wants a scarf hold. He wants an arm triangle at best. He wants an Ezekiel. He wants those moves that are in close quarters that he can just slap onto you. He's a dangerous guy, because how many times have we gone against him only for him to throw up one of these crazy submissions? The Victor Pesta fight, he's getting owned. He gets mounted and he chokes him out. Like, he's one of these guys that you always have to have respect for, especially considering that Mark Hunt, for as lovable as he is, he's got some serious submission deficiencies. Now, it's easy to say that about him, which I've just said, because you look at the early part of his MMA career, obviously he's a kickboxer, he has no idea what he's doing, but he's made a lot of advancements in the last couple of years. He's not getting submitted like he used to. His takedown defense seems to check out. The problem is that he's generally either fighting guys that have tested positive for steroids, whether it be Alistair Overeem or Brock Lesnar, or he's fighting guys that are literally at the peak of their game. Curtis Blades, top 5 heavyweight in the world. Stipe Miocic, when he fought him, top 5 heavyweight in the world, then would become the champion. Like, he fights the absolute best guys. And Alexei Oleinik presents the perfect fight for him, because at 44, he can't fight those guys anymore. But he can fight 41-year-old, also beaten to shit Alexei Oleinik, who has a ton of fights. Most fights out of anybody on the UFC roster, not UFC fights, but most fights in general of anybody on the UFC's entire roster, 400 fighters. This guy, he's a fighting machine. So can Mark Hunt beat this guy? I think so. So how's he got to get it done? Well, as you mentioned earlier, Alexei Oleinik's takedown's not very good. I mean, he's honestly very slow, very plodding, and unathletic. When you look at his fight with Curtis Blades, it's crazy, because you see what an athlete does against this guy. Curtis Blades dances circles around him. It's almost like a sacrificial lamb, him getting tossed in there. You almost feel bad for him at one point. It's like, Jesus Christ. Whereas at least with Mark Hunt, the whole time you're like, damn, Curtis gets this fight to the ground. Like, Mark Hunt's at least still with it, standing. If the fight hits the ground, I'm scared for Mark Hunt, because Alexei Oleinik's one of these guys that, the Mark Hunts of the world, he submits guys like that.
Yep.
Former kickboxer Mirko Cro Cop, same thing. Good takedown defense, pretty decent submission defense. Once he hit the ground with him, he was done. Travis Brown's lighting him up. Once the fight hits the ground, he submits him. With both Jared Rochelle and Anthony Hamilton, he actually stunned them with his striking led to the fight hitting the ground and he submits them. But I see this fight more playing out like the Daniel Milanchuk fight, where maybe he does get a takedown. But if he doesn't submit Mark Hunt right away, in the second round, he's not going to be able to muscle up those takedowns. Well, let's not make any bones about it, dude. His cardio is fucking terrible.
It's brutal.
He either needs to submit you with one of his old school dirty strength moves, or he tires the fuck out.
Yep.
And I think with Mark Hunt, he beats him up. Remember the damage he took against Daniel Milanchuk? His face literally just absolutely.
And he actually had Danny O in some bad spots. He had him in like the scarf holds,
moves. Yep,
or
you're right.
the Ezekiel choke setup. Like he had everything set up on the ground, and it was just Danny O. Maybe Danny O was greasing. I'm just kidding. But he was able to weather the storm, not get submitted in that spot. And then once you get to round 2, it was just like, here comes the beatdown.
Exactly, here comes the beatdown. Now with Hunt, his last win 2 fights ago, Derek Lewis. The later the fight goes and he gets tired and you get tired and now you guys are both just standing there swinging bombs. You're not going to beat Mark Hunt in that game. No. You got to do what Stipe did. You got to do what Blades did. You got to continuously take this guy down. You got to keep on this guy when you do get him taken down. And I don't got faith that Alexei Oleinik can do that. So I think Mark Hunt keeps it standing. I think he beats him up. I don't think at 8,600 he's the worst player in the world, because I do think with his type of power he could stop him, or he could give you 3 or 4 rounds of a beating and stop him late. Or if it does go the whole distance, Jesus, maybe some knockdowns, maybe some just significant strike build-up. 8,600 is not the worst price in the world, so I don't mind it. And for Oleinik, he's not a bad punt either, because at 7,600, he could submit him.
He's like he's a GPP punt for sure.
If he's going to submit him, he's going to submit him early. Why wouldn't you want that guy in some lineups?
Yeah, you want exposure to this fight in general.
Yeah.
Let's move on down the card. We have Nikita Krylov taking on Jan Blachowicz. Nikita Krylov, 8,200 on DraftKings. Blachowicz is 8,000. Krylov was a really, really weird case when they cut him.
They didn't cut him. I think his contract came up and he opted not to resign, probably because he was being offered more money to go fight.
Yeah, so he went to what, Fight Nights Russia. Went on a string of wins. We always kind of saw that there was potential. He started heavyweight, took on like Soa Palele, and it's just like, dude, you are not a heavyweight. But then
Walt Harris, 25 seconds.
And then I think his follow-up fight after that was against Walt Harris, and he came in at like 212 or something like that. Just like, well, this guy's obviously making the move down to light heavyweight. And when you got to light heavyweight, it's just like, all right, this guy actually has a pretty good athletic build. He's got some, he comes from a karate background. He's got some nice kicks, good strikes. He's young, and he went and he was a shining star over in the Russian promotions there. Blachowicz is just such a dirty, ugly fight though, and Blachowicz has one hell of a chin. That's what we have seen in the past. I do like Nikita Krylov, but like this does have. It's a close 8,200, 8,000. It's close for a reason. Like, Blachowicz has the ability to secure takedowns. His striking's serviceable, and he has the ability to slow down the pace of fights. And we have seen Krylov when he did struggle. I'm sure he's probably grown a whole bunch since it. But the Misha Shirkinov fight, where we actually we were right there in Toronto, UFC 206, to see that one. And Krylov, on the feet, everything's going okay. And then what happens? Shirkinov muscles him to the ground, and you kind of see the wind get pulled out of Krylov's sails. So, straight up pick, I think Krylov, the improvements that we've seen since his last stint in the UFC. He's the guy that I'm more interested from a DraftKings perspective, because you're looking at 8,200 and 8,000. But Blachowicz is definitely live in this situation. So Krylov, I'll be playing him on GPPs, because I do see, even with the Blachowicz, with his chin and his ability to take damage, I think Krylov does have that real high ceiling. Like, he could get a couple knockdowns and just land some massive strikes during this fight. What's your take?
Yeah, this is a tough fight. I think you've got to kind of lean towards the underdog in that you're getting some serious merit here for Jan Blachowicz, is that he's kind of that perennial underdog, and he shocks a lot of these guys. Yep. In his last fight with Jimmy Manuwa, you're getting a superior striker who Jimmy Manuwa knocks everybody out, but you can't quite knock out BLACHOWICZ. Okay, well, let's see how Jimmy goes over the course of 3. But Jimmy can't go 3.
Yeah.
And Jan wins. Well, now you have the same thing with Krylov. Krylov, you talked about all those things he had in the UFC, you know, and he's a bright star, and he's looked good in Russia. Krylov's got something very rare that a lot of the best fighters in the world don't have. This guy's got a killer instinct. He's 25-5. That's 30 pro fights. Never been to decision. He is there to kill or be killed.
That's why he's a GPP kind of guy.
GPP kind of guy and a half.
Yep.
It's just it's crazy how we talk about styles. And if you break down his fight with Misha, well, he's either gonna knock Misha out or Misha's gonna submit him. But with Jan, it's like, ooh, the guy that's never been to decision is now fighting a guy who pretty much always goes to decision, right? So you're getting a tough spot here with Krylov always getting these finishes, even in his time outside of the UFC. He gets these quick finishes. It's really hard to gauge how good he is. Now he's fighting up, washed up, former Bellator champion Emmanuel the Hardcore Kid Noon, and he dices him with a knee. Nice looking knee. But you know what? It's Emmanuel Noon.
Yep.
And he smokes Fabio Maldonado. But you know, it's Fabio Maldonado. So now you're back in the UFC, and now you're taking...
They gave you a tough fight.
Yeah, like this guy's a gatekeeper. He is... But he's a good gatekeeper. He's a guy that's proven. He's a guy that's on a win streak, 3-fight winning streak right now. And when you talk about his losses, generally, maybe outside the Pat Cummins fight, but generally to the better guys in the division and routinely goes the distance in those losses. Doesn't get finished. Beat Ilir Latifi, you know, like that's the most power in the division, and he's able to deal with it. He's got a nasty little body kick. Use it against Devin Clark as well. Like the guy's serviceable, like we talked about standing. He's tricky standing, but he's hard to plant that fight-ending shot on. And with Krylov, it seems like his whole arsenal is just fight-ending shot. So it makes you worried. But if you're looking at the $8,200 from a DraftKings standpoint, he's a GPP machine. So you would want to have him. And if you're looking at BLACHOWICZ, even if BLACHOWICZ does tire this kid out, is he going to finish him? Or is he just going to win a 29-28, maybe give up the first round, rally up in 2 and 3? That's kind of more how I see it going, if he's going to win.
Like Krylov, even with the losses in his UFC career, he averages like 78 points on DraftKings. He's almost returned value, and you're factoring in all of the losses that he had, the Shirkinov, the Soapalele. You factor in all of those, and it's just like, well, he's scoring 100 points when he wins because he usually gets a first-round knockout. Now, UFC gave him a tough fight. It's a really tough return fight. I would have liked to see them, like, well, this guy's young. Like, give him.
They've got a huge roster of guys.
They have some other guys just crushing cans on this card, and they give Krylov maybe probably the hardest fight of his career.
Well, see, and you're right when you say that, because the thing is with Jan Blachowicz is that it's the unsexiest fight in the division. Like, who really wants to fight him? I could fight him, but I'm not going to look overly good even if I beat him, because nobody looks overly good when they beat him. Alexander Gustafsson didn't look overly good when he beat him. And I ain't going to put no highlight reel finish on my record. And I ain't getting no bonus money because I ain't knocking this cat out. I ain't submitting them. And we're not getting fight of the night either. Let's be honest here. Maybe, but not likely. So nobody really wants to take this fight. Krylov coming back, he can make a big statement here. Or he can get a taste of reality. See, like I said earlier, his killer instinct is the big thing that goes for him, because when he senses the opportunity, he goes for it. And obviously at 25-5, more times often than not, he's able to put his opponent away. But it's also been his detriment in the fact that he's 26 now. And when we saw him back in the UFC a couple of years ago, he's obviously a little bit younger, a little more immature. But when he goes out there and tries to kill you early and he can't get the job done, he fades away. Yeah. In Russia, he hasn't faded away because nobody's really taken him to those deep waters.
And Jan is the classic type of guy who will take you to those deep waters.
Jan's that classic guy. So this really screams past to me. Personally, it screams past to me, but gun to my head, Krylov's history is fantastic. And there's no denying that one guy's a 26-year-old athlete coming into the prime of his career, way faster, and seems to be a better striker with more output than Jan, who's a low output guy. And if the fight stays standing, wouldn't you want the 26-year-old over the 35-year-old Jan Blachowicz, the gatekeeper? But gatekeepers are gatekeepers for a reason, right? They guard the gate, and this guy seems to be pretty good at it, so he could pull one over for sure.
We have Shamil Abdurakhimov taking on Andrei Arlovsky. Shamil Abdurakhimov is 8,300 on DraftKings. And Arlovsky is 7,900. This just screams ugly heavyweight 3-round stinker to me. Shamil doesn't really have great power. We haven't seen much from him.
His last
He's a
fight
good-
against Chase Sherman, but that was his first knockout in 6 years.
Yes.
So you're correct. You are correct.
And I know people are going to be lining up to try to fade. Oh, Arlovski's got no chin, but just like, that's what we say every single fight. And it's like with Diego last week, where we kind of went out on a limb there. Not even on a limb. We were just like, Craig White is not the kind of guy that scares me when they're taking on Diego Sanchez. Diego Sanchez has enough of a chin that he can probably survive against Craig White, and we see advantages for him in other spots. I think Shamil and Andre are actually pretty similar fighters.
Yeah.
In terms of like how they play their game, like how they approach, the pace that they fight at. It's all pretty slow. I think this is kind of I think it's a 3-round stinker. No, thank you, Andre. Like, I'm just gonna fade this fight completely and hope that I don't get burned.
Geez, tough spot, man. I think you're right. Both guys kind of have a lot of similarities. ABDURAKHIMOV, 37. Arlovski seems like he's been around forever. I think 39. So relatively same age. They both come from Sambo backgrounds. They're heavyweights, so they got some power, but more oftentimes than not, they're not knocking their opponent flush out. But ABDURAKHIMOV's got a better chin than Arlovski does, and I think if you think this is going to be a classic Andre Arlovski, there's a gun battle that happens at some point, he gets clipped. Yeah, anybody in the division can knock out Andre Arlovski.
Sure.
He's had a suspect chin since 2011. I think he registers second most knockout losses on the UFC current roster next to Alistair Overeem. Maybe he doesn't have the greatest chin, but that's because these guys are heavyweights. If they hit him, he's going to go down. But, geez, Taito Ivasa's got some serious power, and Andre Arlovski took some serious shots.
Yeah.
And prior to that, it's like, damn, he actually tied together a 2-fight winning streak. Big dog against Junior Albini. 92 significant strikes landed by Arlovski in that fight. Terrible fight. So boring. But still, I mean, he did his job. He's a serviceable guy still. Against Stefan Struve, gets the takedowns on Stefan Struve. Grinds out Stefan Struve. Against Taito Ivasa, didn't get knocked out. I'm not saying he's reinvigorated. I'm saying he's looked the best he has in years. And those 3 fights are the only 3 fights that he's had under the American Top Team banner since leaving Greg Jackson's gym. So I'm not saying he's a new fighter. He's 39 years old, and he's Andre Arlovski. And his chin's not getting any better. But his game plans are a lot wiser. He's almost like Alistair Overeem in the regard that, you know, as I mentioned earlier, they both have all these knockout losses. Way smarter in his approach. He's not going out there fighting people like he did against Travis Brown. Like, we used to talk about that. Like, oh, he's still a wild card. What if he goes out there and browns him? It's like, nah, dude, he doesn't brown no more because he's done that against... He tried to do it against...
He's self-aware.
Yeah,
it's like we see a lot of these guys. Like, Diego's last fight was classic. He's just like... Diego knows that he can't get into those wars anymore. The old exchanges, when he got rocked by Craig White in round 2, it's just like the old Diego would have just started slinging. But what Diego do? The new Diego goes, I gotta go for his legs. Low single. Let's get this guy on the ground.
Yeah.
I know I can't take this damage. Arlovski's the same. We saw the reemergence of Alistair Overeem was similar to this. It's like all these.
Cesar Mutanch Ferreira.
You either die. Yeah. You either in this game you either accept these things or you die. Right? It's like you either, like Justin Gaethje is a good example. I think he still obviously has some fights in the tank, but if he continues to fight that way, we're just going to get to a spot eventually where everyone just knocks out Justin Gaethje. But he does actually have that wrestling background. So maybe when he gets to that spot, he goes, all right, let's go back to my wrestling and change my game. Because if you continue to fight that style, eventually your career's just gone. Nobody's giving you any. Well, you'll get some offer. They'll bring you over to Russia to lose, or Russia, or they'll bring you over to Ryzen. Yeah, exactly. That's the type of spots you end up in. But you don't end up sticking around the major promotions unless you adapt. You adapt or die.
Yeah. And in Arlovski, in many ways, is like I said, his last 3 fights, 2-1 over that span, which is kind of unheard for Arlovski. But he's another situation like Mark Hunt, whereas he's at the tail end of his career. There's no bit of doubt about it. But he just fights seemingly the better guys in the division. Now, Albini, turns out, big baby, he's no good. And Arlovski can still beat those guys. Stefan Struve, he's got a serious deficiency in his game, and he can beat those guys. Taito Ivasa, even though Tuivasa beat him, he gave him a go. And to me, the biggest thing that in this fight is, even though I think they match up pretty similar, I don't think the fight's going to hit the ground, because I don't think Arlovski necessarily... Arlovski might try to take him down. He might. And I could see Shamil trying to take Arlovski down, but I don't know that either guy's going to be able to take the other man down. So now we got a striking battle, and they're both low-paced strikers. So you're right. It's going to be a snooze fest. I think snooze fest. slow pace. But typically, those kind of fights, Arlovsky lands more punches. Look at the Albini fight. It's a prime example of that. He just doubles up on him. Like, it's not that Albini's not there anymore. It's that Albini's throwing one shot at a time, and Arlovsky's throwing two shots at a time. And he ends up outstriking him 2-1 on the strike stats. So this could be the same situation here. ABDURAKHIMOV, he diced up Chase Sherman, no doubt about it. But as I mentioned, he literally hadn't scored a knockout victory since 2011. Prior to that, the power's not there. And the later fight goes, as we've seen with the Derek Lewis fight, his gas tank just shuts right down. So
that was in round 4 that he got finished.
He got finished in round 4, but think about it. That whole fight was him taking down Lewis effortlessly and him lying on Lewis. How did he get so tired? And he got finished right at the beginning of round 4. So he was cooked at the end of round 3. But those takedowns don't happen the same against Arlovsky, who's more mobile. He's faster than him. He's sharper with his boxing technique. If he doesn't got to worry about getting clipped, like every fight we break him down in, he's always got to worry about getting clipped. But if that's not a factor here, then yeah, why can't he get the win? The $7,900 is not great because it could be a slow pace fight where he wins with 50 significant strikes. You take 25 points off that. You take a decision victory. You're not getting your 79 points worth.
Yeah.
But if you're playing a cash game and you want somebody that could relatively be on the safe side and save some capital, he could be a guy.
That makes sense to me. All right, let's move on. We got Alexei Kunchenko taking on Thiago Alves. 9,000 for Kunchenko, making his UFC debut, and Alves is 7,200. Kunchenko 18-0. Russian Muay Thai fighter, seems to have some power from like the limited footage that I have seen on him. Not very much respect out there for Thiago Alves. He's coming off of a knockout loss to Curtis Millender. What a hell of a, that was a nice head kick that set up the finish in that fight. This one, if this one was stateside, maybe I'd be a little bit more inclined to be supporting Mr. Thiago Alves here, but in Russia, this guy like from Moscow fights out of Moscow. He's taking on an aging veteran that they're flying over. It's just like, you know what this sounds like? Fight Night, Fight Nights Europe or M1 Global. It's just like, this is the classic situation where they bring over a guy who's a little bit past their prime, take on a young or a newer, I don't know how young he is, but newer Russian killer who's undefeated. We've seen this story told a bunch of times. I think Kunchenko gets the knockout, but 9,000 is a hefty price to pay up for in this spot. What's your take?
Yeah, lucky for you. I've watched as much tape as Alexander Kunchenko as a human being could watch.
That's
I've had to work pretty much every M1 show he's ever fought on. He's got so much power. But he's not the most technical guy. And he doesn't come from some crazy Russian Sambo background or wrestling background. He's kind of suspect in some ways, which we'll get to. 18-0. That's got to look like the most beautiful record. A signing like that, unheard of. He's probably got to be one of the top free agents coming in. 13 knockout victories, too. Like, power for days. But he's 34 years old, Paul. And he's a guy that's largely probably had the best days of his career outside of a UFC octagon or outside of the limelight. So even though he's a good signing right now, he's at his ceiling.
Peak.
Yeah, he might absolutely go out here and roll up Thiago Alves.
But you're not seeing a title run in the future.
Do you remember Brendan Thatch? And he signs to the UFC, and I think it was Paulo Thiago who he fought for his debut. And Thiago had hype, and he ruined him. He ruined him. But remember, Thatch was an older guy. He was like 32. It was like, oh, this guy's a sweet prospect. Not a prospect. 34 years old, Kunchenko is not getting any better. But the guy's pretty damn good. Now, his background, like I said, it's not a Sambo, it's not wrestling, anything like that. It's hand-to-hand combat and amateur mixed martial arts. He's a master of sport in hand-to-hand combat, and they give him an honorary master of sport in judo, but that's mostly just because he has a sick 18-0 undefeated record. It's easy to argue that he's more than just a striker per se. In M1, man, again, he touches you and you absolutely go down. He's fought a bunch of credible opponents. It's not a blown up 18-0 record. Credible opponents. Even though he's got that power, and it typically, sometimes it looks like he gets a little bit tired and he lays off the trigger a little bit. He's 2 or 3 times in his career, he's gone the 5 rounds. He scored a knockout in the 4th round of his career. Like, the power just carries over with him. His last fight against Butenko in M1, you could actually bet the fight. They opened up a betting line. Not that that matters on it, but it just shows you that, you know, this guy Kunchenko gets a lot of support from his people. But anyways, regardless of that, Kunchenko goes in. He loses the 1st round against Butenko because of the takedowns. It almost looks like, this guy's doesn't... he's not as good as his record would suggest. He's probably an overhyped guy, to be perfectly honest with you. But the second round, Krylov, the smaller man, starts to tire a little bit. He gets hit a couple times. Once you get hit by Kunchenko, you're done. So Thiago Alves, the problem with him is that he's not a durable guy anymore. He's not a guy that can go a hard 3 with you. And if he was to come out there and be the little quicker guy and maybe beat Tkachenko to the punch for the first round, that's fine. But in the second and third round, he's going to get hit. And when this guy gets hit, man, his face gets rearranged. His nose goes to the left. He goes down now.
He's going to have to land lots of leg kicks, and he's probably going to have to hurt Kunchenko early to pull off a victory in this spot.
But you know, we often think about Thiago Alves in those leg kicks, but that's just, he's not that guy anymore. He's not that guy that goes in there and destroys your legs and has that explosive athleticism. He used to be a big welterweight, struggled to make welterweight. Then all of a sudden, he loses all of, I'm not saying anything about him, he loses all of his muscle mass. He gets a bunch of injuries. He takes a couple years off. He comes back from that. He says he can make 55. Buddy, you struggle to make 170. Tries to make 55.
Fails miserably.
Oof, body shuts down. 161 against Jim Miller. Loses to Jim Miller, and basically pretty much a stand-up fight. Looks terrible. And then since then, what? He's come back to 170, and he beat Patrick Cote, who announced his retirement right after the fight. And he's got a fight over Jordan Mean, in which he was taking a life-changing beating prior to landing that, Hail Mary body kick that saved him. So you can't have any faith in Thiago Alves. He's being brought over here as that guy with the big name. People are willing to watch. Russian fans know him, American fans know him, Brazilian fans know him, international fans know this guy. Yeah. Let's bring him over there. And Kunchenko's on borrowed time. We need to give him an opponent that's beatable, but we also need to speed along the process.
So we can give him a top 30, top 20 type of guy in the world.
Yeah, he can't come in.
Follow-up fight. Next time we're in Russia, he'll take on a top 15 guy, maybe.
He can't fight Craig White because then nobody's going to give a damn.
No.
But if he goes out there and obliterates Thiago Alves, well, then now we can start talking about this guy versus Matt Brown, let's say, or this guy versus
Neil
Carlos.
Magny.
This guy versus no, that's a bad fight for him. That's a bad. Him versus Carlos Condit, great fight for him.
Yeah.
Him versus Cowboy Oliveira, pretty good fight for him. Good fight for him, actually, in fact. Him versus Yancey or Cerrone, those are all good fights for him. Him versus Neil Magny, bad fight for him. That's the fight that gets announced. Fade him, take Magny. So all I'm getting at is great record, great guy, looks like he's going to win. I'd play the 9,000, but against the Neil Magnys of the world, he's not a world beater. But this is not a world level opponent.
This is a spot for him to be set up to get a win that'll look really good on the resume. It'll be shining on the resume. They go, this guy absolutely crushed Thiago Alves, former title challenger.
Yeah.
I think we're on the same page. We got Khalid. Or you have one final thing to say?
Greasy theory. It's hard to pay off a guy who's got an undefeated record. He's not going to blow an 18-0 record here. You know what I mean? You don't got to worry about him taking any type of dive. He's going to give his full effort because he's 18-0, Paul. The move here is get him a couple wins in the UFC and then get this guy a challenge at the title.
You swerved our boy Chad behind the glass there so hard on that right there. So
he's still
apologies
learning.
to those watching on YouTube. That
we could just put up a board.
He did put up the board, and then he took off the board. Apologies. We will get into. I'm just kidding with you. We will get into Khalid Murtazaliev taking on CB Dollaway, 8,400 Murtazaliev, and 7,800 CB Dollaway. Mr. Clarence Byron. I feel as though I watched some tape on Murtazaliev. Maybe I should be throwing to you because you probably watched all the tape on Murtazaliev.
Well, Murtazaliev,
I watched some. He looks functional. He looks okay.
Yeah.
Like he looks like I think it's a similar type of setup from the previous fight that we've talked about. I just don't know if Murtazaliev is as good as Kunchenko, but the guy looks pretty well rounded. His striking looks decent. Like he doesn't look like a scrub. He looks like a guy who can hang in the UFC these days. And CB, frankly, like his ability to take damage has went down the sewer recently. Ever since he fell from that elevator shaft in Pittsburgh, he had the back injury and all of that stuff. So, I'll be picking the Russian to get the job done here. I just think that this could potentially be another fight that goes the distance. So. Pick is Murtazaliev, but I'm not in love with this fight in general. What's your take?
Yeah, I look at Murtazaliev and the Murtazaliev versus Dollaway kind of in the same regard as Krylov versus BLACHOWICZ. Is like, this is one of those fights that's dangerous in that the guy that's supposed to win, the guy that's got the bigger value in terms of the $8,400 that you're going to play for Murtazaliev, this could be the fight that shits in the apple pie for you. This could be the one that kind of ruins a parlay for you, or whatever the case may be. But Murtazaliev, it's just, he's a finisher. And then, yeah, if you're worried about Dollaway's ability to take damage, well, that's a problem, because Murtazaliev is a guy that goes out there and he's got a lot of first-round finishes. He's got second-round finishes. You mentioned the fact that he's functional. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he doesn't seem to be a world-class athlete. He doesn't seem to have, big X factors in his. I don't know how high his ceiling is, but he's one of those guys that you see it a lot on these ACB cards. You see it a lot on these M1 cards. It's like, this guy's got a 13-2 record. You've likely never heard of him. He comes out of there. He swings bombs. He hits his opponent. They go down. He's got a lot of these finishes. His only 2 losses have both come to the same guy. Lost to him the first time, I believe, by submission while he was 1-2. That guy goes on a run. He rematches him down the road while the guy's 8-2. Gets knocked out in the 4th round. So he's got 2 losses, both to the same guy. CB Dollaway is the most experienced guy he's ever fought. CB Dollaway is probably the best guy he's ever fought. CB Dollaway, if he just goes out there and opts to use his wrestling, can take this guy down. Because, he's Russian, sure, but he's largely just a striker. He wants to keep the fight standing. Dollaway's striking's he knocked out Cesar Ferrer with that cool little slip. But for the most part, he dropped Michael Bisping, in fact. But for the most part, it's like, he doesn't want to get in those exchanges anymore. His last fight against Hector Lombard, yeah, he won, but did he? Because he was unconscious at the end of the fight. So it's hard to say that he won the fight, late punch or not.
Really, really knocked out.
He got completely dusted.
That one was real tilting.
On paper, he's on a 2-fight winning streak. He beat Ed Herman in what was a terrible fight, but he utilized his wrestling in. And then his next fight against Hector Lombard, not taking down Hector Lombard with those judo credentials, plus the fact that he's a short little fire hydrant. So you got to strike with this guy, and he got blasted. So when he comes out against Murtazaliev, if he's not getting the takedowns and it's forced to be a stand-up battle, there's a good possibility here that he just gets caught with something and he gets knocked out. And if that's the case, for GPPs, $8,400, you would definitely want some slices of Murtazaliev. If CB Dollaway is going to get the fight, would it be worth it to take the chance on him at 7,800? Then maybe he does get the fight on the ground. And if he does get the fight to the ground, Murtazaliev has been finished in both his pro losses. So is it worth it? Yeah, it'd be worth it. But Dollaway's not really a finisher per se. He's more of a grinder. He's more of those, once he does get you to the ground, he's got good
more of a
jiu-jitsu.
cash game play again, like BLACHOWICZ.
He's too risky to be a cash game play.
Because he doesn't have the chin that BLACHOWICZ
Yeah, because BLACHOWICZ is going to get 3 rounds even if he loses, whereas this guy could theoretically get dusted in the first round. He could theoretically get dusted in the second round. The fight with Nate Marquardt, he was fighting a shot Nate Marquardt, and he was winning and doing fine. And he got the tad bit overzealous, and he got starched against Marquardt, right? So then he gets in the elevator accident. Then he tries to sue. Then he doesn't fight for a couple years. Then he comes back against Herman at 205. And then he comes back down against Lombard. Now he's getting older. Prime years of his career gone.
Absolutely crippled, knocked out after the bell.
And then he takes like 7 or 8 months off, and he's coming back in this spot. So it reeks. Don't take CB Dollaway. But again, when it reeks, it's possible that shit's around, and it could be near your pie. So just beware.
Yep, 100%. All right, we got Peter Yan taking on Jin Soon Sun. Wow, this looks like a setup. We got Yan 9,600 on DraftKings, and Sun, who is about to get sunned, is 6,600. Peter Yan is like just an all-action type of fighter. I think we're going to talk about the other guys up in this like 9K range at some point, but I think it's Yan or nobody up here. You either pay all the way up for him, or you go back down to like the 9K and then high 8s. Those are kind of the 2 spots on this slate that I'm targeting. Yan scored 125 points in his UFC debut. Looks like his
a better opponent than this.
His follow-up opponent is an easier opponent. The guy just is going to put a ferocious pace on this. On Sun, who is basically, I think this is like his 3rd opponent or something. Like nobody wants to fight Peter Yan, and for good reason, because you're going to go to war and nobody actually knows. The hardcores know him. The people who watch Russian regional MMA know him and love him. But the average, the casual people out there, people who are tuning in for Conor McGregor versus Khabib Nurmagomedov, are not familiar with this guy. So If you're going to pay all the way up, I think you pay all the way up and you get Peter Yan on your squad.
Yeah, no, Peter Yan. I mean, he was going to be in a fun fight with Douglas D'Andrade prior to him getting hurt.
Much easier, or a much more credible opponent.
Yeah, because he would have starched him, I think. But with Andrade's power, interesting.
Yeah.
But with Son, it's like, dude, that power's not there. And in fact, he just hasn't really fought anybody that could be even compared to Peter Yan. He's spent his entire career on the deep regional scene in Asia. And let's just say deep isn't particularly deep with talent. I mean, he's had a lot of opponents that have been perfectly set up for him. He is a prodigy of Korean Zombie. And even though that sounds pretty cool, and we all love Korean Zombie is also known for his ability to just take a licking. Yep. And he's not the most technical guy in the world, but he's got X factor. He's a good kickboxer, and he's got one hell of a chin, and he's got some crazy submissions. But his prodigy son is not those things. He's a guy that's building his way up, has now got a call. Can you come in short notice? Korea, really not a lot far from Russia. Come in, do the damn thing, as they say. And Peter, I don't know why Peter Yan's on the prelims of a card that, you know, we talked about it last week with the UFC's pay-per-view. It's that maybe they weren't promoting the right guys. And then we talked about this week's card. And it's like, you know, a fun card, but if you're going to take these Russian guys and put the spotlight on them by letting them have some showcase fights against talent that, as you can see by the DraftKings value, they're in here to presumably lose, at least according to the numbers anyways.
Let the people see the squash matches that you're setting up.
Like, why not put this up on the main card where it's not on the Fight Pass portion that half of the people are not going to be able to see, and it's early in the morning, so the other half of people might not get up in time. Like, whatever the case may be. Peter Yan seems to be the real deal. Former ACB champ, had the fight of the year against Magomedov, beats him in the rematch, comes in the UFC. Teruto Ishihara, goofy guy, sure, and definitely not as talented as some people may have thought he was, but still a durable guy, still a guy that's got some tricks up his sleeve, had nothing for Peter Yan.
Guy who's won at this level before.
Yeah, a guy that's won at this level before, and Son has not won at this level. Doesn't seem like the kind of guy that would win at this level. No. And even if he was to pull a victory out, you know, it would have to be against one of these former tough Latin America washouts or something like that. So what I'm saying is Peter Yan seems to be the real deal. He should roll here. The 9,600, the only thing I could say against that is that he's probably going to be chalk owned. I think a lot of people try to get Peter Yan, and Peter Yan presumably just goes out there and gets a first round finish. But there's going to be some other fights on this card that are also going to be first round finishes that are obviously cheaper than Peter Yan. So if you can find the other fights that will score in that same range as him and save that money, that could be crucial considering how high owned he should be.
So basically, to wrap it up, we're saying that Jin will get soon sunned. I thought that was funny. Real corny dad humor, I guess. We got Rustam Khabilov taking on Raging Cajun Johnson. Rustam Khabilov is 9,500 on DraftKings, and Cajun Johnson is 6,700. Man, do they want to get rid of Cajun Johnson, who is like one of the major voices about unionizing with fighters and stuff. They're just like, how about this? We will give you every single Russian that people do not want to fight until you get on a losing streak that we can cut you. And like, that's what's happening here. Like, let's face it. They're flying Cajun Johnson, of all the guys on the roster, flying him over to Moscow, Russia to take on a Russian. Come on.
Yeah.
Like, they're trying to get rid of him.
Well, think about it. Because if I was like, I want to fire you, but legally I can't.
They gave him Khabib's cousin last fight.
Yeah.
Now they give him Rustam Khabilov. So it's a bit of a step down. I think Islam is a little bit better, but like, Rusty Cable's 21-3. Like, he can enact the exact same game plan that Islam just did in his last fight. Like, it's right there for the
I think he plans on it.
Yeah.
Islam is Khabilov 4 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, like when he was still spitting and smacking Masvidal in the face and tossing Benson Henderson on his face prior to getting caught, of course. No, I hear you. Listen, what are the ways to get rid of this guy? Well, legally, he's got a contract. Okay. Sign this contract to fight this guy. You don't like the matchup? Hey, if you turn it down, you're getting cut. If you're turning it down. So what are your options? You going to take the fight? Yeah, you take the fight. The fight with Islam Makhachev was a huge disservice. The problem is now coming. Let's look at it from Adriano Martins. Bad fight for anybody. And Adriano Martins,
but he pulled it off.
But dude, he pulls it off. He clips him. He clips him good. He actually won the second round prior, even though he got dropped in the first.
They've been giving him all the guys that don't have established names yet. That
they're like, don't worry,
killers.
Martins will take him out. Pfft, no problem. And it's like Mortal Kombat. He like beats him. It's like, Stevie Ray, we just gave him a new contract. He's got a chip on his shoulder ever since that, Stevie Ray's got it. It's ever since the Paul Felder fight, he wants it. Pff, Stevie Ray, off. I'm thinking like, shit. Well, now he's moved up to Islam. And even though, KHABILOV would have to be that next step, even above that, they're not doing him any favors. This looks like a guy.
KHABILOV is a step above him at this point. I don't think he is.
Well, I think he is.
He's more experienced. But
that's all he's got going for him because he's less explosive. And he, like I said, remember when KHABILOV first came to UFC? He tossed Yancy Medeiros on his head like it was nothing. He tossed Vince Pichel on his head like it was nothing. He was the Russian suplex machine. Rustam the Tiger KHABILOV, Greg Jackson prodigy, decent hands on him. Like he was the man. It's that his fights are so unentertaining that people just don't really care about him. And then he kind of floated out of the limelight. Makhachev's young, and he's got that direct relation to Khabib, who's hot right now. And he blasted Gleison Tebow, and he looked really good. And he blasted Chris Wade outside of getting caught with that sweet flying scissor heel, or that sweet flying switch kick. Yeah, Makhachev's got the heat, but KHABILOV's every bit as dangerous, just with less finishing ability.
Yeah.
The thing is that when I look at this fight, part of me is saying there's a warning here, Cody. There's a warning in that KHABILOV doesn't ever really go for it. Like, he never really stands out. His fights are all relatively close. Watching them is very frustrating because there's always an aura that he's kind of shitting in the apple pie for you, or that he's not doing enough. But to his credit, he probably knows that, and he always steps it up that little bit. He's on a 5-fight winning streak. And let me read to you this. Actually, his last loss prior to his 5-fight winning streak, Adriano Martins, split decision in just a really close fight. But the Norman Park fight was a really close fight, but he win it. Chris Wade, close fight, close enough. Leandro Silva, Jason Sago, Des Green in his last fight.
Yeah.
Cajun Johnson is no better than any of the guys I just named. He's mobile. He keeps good range. He should have a little bit of a speed advantage. He's got a long jab, but he's not faster than Des Green. He doesn't have the footwork of Des Green. He doesn't have he doesn't have that movement of Leandro Silva. He's not. Eventually, KHABILOV just lands his strikes. Eventually, he gets a hold of you. Eventually, he can either tear you to the ground or these days hold you up against the cage, which wins fights. It's boring, but it wins fights.
And you don't want that type of thing happening to your DraftKings.
The only thing
the
that
problem
could
is
possibly
that
go
in the
wrong,
Islam fight, we were sitting here saying Cajun has the type of style that slows down fights, and
it didn't matter. And that's why.
And you know what? It was all actually
should
coming
do the
to
same
fruition until like a minute 30 left in that first round, and Islam got him to the ground. When he got him to the ground, he got that finish. But like, if we stretch that, if he doesn't get that takedown at the end of round one and doesn't, get all the advances and everything that set up the submission, if we get to round two, he just blew value. He doesn't actually get to his value anymore, and he's not a guy that ends up on the winning lineup in DraftKings. So I don't want him. Cajun is that type of guy.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna double down on my stupidity from the last time that Cajun Johnson fought, and I'm gonna basically stay away from Rustam KHABILOV just because I don't like playing him on DraftKings. I don't think he's I really don't think he's rarely ever a viable type of option.
No, his KHABILOV's last 6 fights have gone to the decision. So the only way he's going to be able to score anywhere close to the $9,500 price tag he has, anywhere close, is if it's just multiple takedowns, takedown city.
Yeah.
The problem there is that he only needs one.
Yeah.
He just needs to take him down once, and then even though Cajun Johnson's a black belt, and even though he just got submitted by Makhachev, he's not bad on the ground. He's good on the ground. He probably won't get submitted by KHABILOV here. He probably doesn't get TKO by KHABILOV here. He probably just gets taken down, lies on his back, goes through the motions, drops a decision. So I don't like that price tag on KHABILOV. I'd have to avoid it. One thing here is this fight, as crazy as this may sound, KHABILOV kind of just a little bit better everywhere, and I feel like he's going to be trying to track down Cajun Johnson, who's going to move. He'll get the takedowns, sure. If this fight happens in Russia, worst case scenario in the actual fight is that KHABILOV, sometimes he's got a tendency to just not go for the takedowns. He tries to strike with these guys. He got the shorter reach against Cajun, and maybe he's not as fast as Cajun. So if Cajun's just ever so slightly outpointing him, the fight's in Russia. The forward movement from KHABILOV, and just moving forward, they're going to be like, yeah, give it to the Russian. If this fight happens in BC, where Cajun's the hometown guy, and Canadian judges are absolutely terrible, maybe they look at that, oh, he was evading him, and he landed 12 strikes this round to the 9 strikes by Rustam KHABILOV. Even though he gave up a takedown, he outstruck him. I'm giving it to Cajun Johnson. You never know. I think it's going to be a close fight, because all of KHABILOV's fights seem to be relatively close. but he wins relatively close fights. So, yeah, I got Rustam Khabilov. Don't play that price tag on him at the $9,500.
Maribek TAISUMOV 8,900 on DraftKings. Des Green 7,300. What you take here?
Yeah, this is the third of the. I mentioned the fact that Jan Blachowicz could be definitely a live dog coming in here. CB Dollaway, in some regards, could be a live dog coming in here, and I think Des Green could, in fact, be a live dog coming in here. Only because Maribek, we talked about it last week. Sometimes value is based on recent history, and in the case of Diego Sanchez, it was bad value because his recent history wasn't great. Maribek TAISUMOV's got excellent recent history. He's also fought a lot of suspect-level guys. A lot of guys that were in there to do the damn thing with him, and he smacked them around senseless. He looks fantastic when he's destroying guys in the first or second round. But what about when he's not knocking guys out in the first or second round? Well, it's hard to really gauge. We haven't seen that in a long time. Last time being when Michel Prazeres absolutely dominated this guy, pillar to post. So with Des Green's never been knocked out. So if he can survive the first round and the second round, he pushes a good enough pace. I mean, he's trained by Henry Hooft. He trains with world-class strikers on a day-to-day basis. He knows what he's going to get himself into against a guy like TAISUMOV. TAISUMOV's going to put that power on him.
Make it ugly. Don't hang out at range.
Yeah, make it ugly. Don't stay at range. Use your movement. Use that speed a little bit on you. Try to take him down. Even if you're not taking him down, grind on him and try to tire him out.
Hold him up against the fence.
Yeah, and dude, we don't know for sure that he doesn't have that brain deficiency that he used to have. Whereas when somebody shoots a takedown, I'm like, oh, I grabbed the cage. It's like, don't grab the cage. He lost 2 points in that fight, man. And he grabbed the cage like 3 or 4 times. It was crazy, but it really showed to you that he has holes in his game. Now, we don't know if those holes in his game are there anymore. Chances are it's been long enough that he would have shorted up a little bit. Chances are that he's been working on his ground game. But again, we don't know. And Des Green's one of those tricky opponents because you can't knock him out. You got to settle in a pace with him. You know, look at the Josh Emmett fight. Emmett's got big power. Emmett's a good wrestler. Emmett's an athletic guy. He closes distance very well. But Green goes out there, has a close fight with him, outpoints him. The other thing, too, is I don't want to take too much hate for saying this comment, but Des Green, this guy's committed, dude. I've never seen anybody more committed to a fight. He tried to get anybody he could to mimic TAISUMOV's power, and he couldn't find it. So he got in his car and swerved onto oncoming traffic, right into a fucking truck, just to feel that TAISUMOV power. Now, I don't want to be disrespectful. 2 people died in that accident. It's TAISUMOV power. TAISUMOV's power is nothing to fuck with. But Green was pretty much fine, dude. Like, he pretty much just walked away from the incident. That little half days went back to training camp. So this guy can take it. And against TAISUMOV, you're going to need that. So if he's gone to those extreme levels of training, he is ready for this fight. And even though I love me some TAISUMOV, and even though if you're playing DraftKings, I mean, you want some TAISUMOV. Let's be real here.
Yeah.
Tricky opponents that are durable and can pose a different look for you, i.e. a Jan Blachowicz, are tricky opponents, man. And
I hear that.
I don't want to buy into the fact that TAISUMOV's literally blown away a pile of nobodies. For the most part.
Well, you knocked out
Alan
Jobin.
Patrick. Who?
Alan Jobin.
TAISUMOV?
Yeah.
Obviously, he's. I'm gonna read you this list of knockout wins right here.
He's a scary dude, man. Like
he's a totally,
that power
is
a different level.
He's a totally scary dude.
When I was saying earlier that I'm either paying up to Jan or I'm getting into that high 8s range, TAISUMOV is one of the guys. I play mostly GPP. This is not a cash play at all. And TAISUMOV, like, if he scores, if he wins, it's probably in the first 2 rounds knockout, and he's going to be landing some heavies.
Okay. Let me counter with this. So he loses to Michel Prazeres, which was 2014. That's a long time ago.
Who else lost to Michel Prazeres?
Lots of people.
Des Green.
Fair enough. Close enough fight. Ish, I guess.
No.
Well, anyways, he loses the fight to Prazeres, okay? His next fight, he knocks out Marcin Bandel. Terrible. Gets the easy knockout.
Sure.
Bandel cut shortly thereafter. His next fight, Tony Christodoulou. Paul. He didn't even take him out in the first round, by the way. He did him in the second round. He took out Tony Christodoulou second round.
He was one of the first guys that was in the Paul Shaughnessy worst fighter in the UFC Hall of Fame.
Worst fighter in the UFC Hall of Fame, that's true. Okay. He beats Bandel, who gets cut. He beats Christodoulou. They're both terrible. They both get cut. Then he beats Alan Patrick. That's a credible victory in that Patrick's
a good... Nugeti is a good fighter.
He's not bad, okay? Then he beats Damir Handzovic, very one-dimensional guy, and his one dimension is not, you do not want to go out there and bang with TAISUMOV.
No.
So he beats him. And then he follows that up by beating Felipe Silva. One-dimensional Muay Thai guy, clearly no good on the ground after seeing that knee bar loss of his against Puelles, but those are all like tailor-made fights for him. They're guys that are European, regional scene guys. He's not fighting American guys in America because he can't get the visa. So he's fighting European level or Brazilian level talent that are just mid-level guys. And he's matching up good with them, and he's hitting them, and he's knocking them out. They're not pushing him. And Des Green, you know, because he hasn't been knocked down in his career, and he's fought some tough dudes, if he rolls with those punches and pushes a little bit of a pace, and then gets his wrestling going, he's a live dog, man. And looking at that price for $7,300, even if he just goes out there and gets me a handful of takedowns and works it and can get out a split decision, hallelujah. This would be the guy. This would be that one dog that has a shot.
I don't hate your mentality here.
You're just a big TAISUMOV guy.
I'm just going the other side.
No,
when I said Joban, I was thinking about Albert Tumanov. It just kind of clued in on me there.
With a lot of these
Russian.
As soon as you said, I was like, yeah, Joban's a welterweight.
Starts with a T and ends with an OV. Like, you can understand.
I can understand it too because TAISUMOV
on the spot here.
TAISUMOV doesn't fight frequently, so even though he's a murderer and everybody should be talking about him, sometimes he slips out of public perception a little bit because he's always dealing with visa issues. Always dealing with visa issues. It's a shame because I don't know what he's capable of, but because I don't know what he's capable of, maybe you can still fade him and realize that he still is that Michel Prazeres fighter who can't stuff the takedown and can't keep up the pace. We don't know yet, but we're going to find out Saturday.
Magomed Ankalaev takes on Marcin Prachnio. Ankalaev 9,100 on DraftKings, Prachnio 7,100. Ankalaev, you know what he likes doing? Shitting in apple pies. Holy crap. Against Paul Bear Jew Craig. Woo.
That's starch.
Dominates.
Starch.
14 minutes and 59 seconds of the fight. Taps out last second. This guy, I don't know whether his corner wasn't yelling to him. What happened? He panicked. Obviously, the choke was locked in, but like he panicked. And that is 9,100. We actually faded Prachnio. He was a favorite against
Sam Alves.
Against Sam Alves last time out. Loved Alves. That was actually a really good card because I think Latifi's knockout of Corey Anderson.
Yeah, it was actually a good.
Was on that card as well.
Yeah. That was a good card. What wasn't a good card was Ankalaev losing on the same card as Hakeem Dawodu.
Yeah. Ankalaev looked like...
That killed me.
Ankalaev looks like he has the skills. Nice stand-up, crisp type of striking
does have
ability.
The skills. Has the skills.
And Prachnio is just kind of a rush forward, super jacked kind of guy. He's going to land hard. I just find it hard to trust Ankalaev, and he didn't look like a full-out like power killer here, and his volume wasn't too insane. It wasn't too high against Craig. As I was kind of saying, it's just like you pay up for Jan in this 9K range, or you don't pay up at all. That's my general opinion. Prachnio, we just saw the way that you lose to Sam Alves is you rush forward, and Sam Alves just throws his straight left right down the pipe, and that's what happens to you. And it went completely that way. I'm not sure Ankalaev fights that same way, though. He kind of likes moving forward. He uses crisp strikes. The matchup would dictate that I'm not paying up for Ankalaev, and I don't think Prachnio is anything special. If you were playing like over 20 lineups, I think you can maybe put Prachnio as a GPP flyer. But that's all I would even touch in this fight. What's your take?
Yeah, I would have to avoid Marcin Prachnio at all.
You're playing like 50 lineups,
costs.
man. Like when you play that many lineups, you're playing some guys.
Yeah, and then you're gonna play some Ankalaev in those lineups in the same breath. I mean, he looked awesome against Paul Craig for 14 minutes and 58 seconds. Actually, the triangle was on for a couple of seconds. 14 minutes and 56 seconds. This guy looked really good, man. He came in with a credible 9-0 record. He had beaten some tough guys. Former Greco-Roman wrestling champion in Russia. Former, master of sport. He looked the part, man. He was taking down Paul Craig. He was beating him standing. He was taking him down. His ground and pound looked good. His top game was good. The pressure was good. Everything was there. It just turns out the second that triangle got even remotely deep, whether he didn't know how much time there was or anything, it was a fast tap, dude. He wanted out of there. Now, I'm not going to say he has no heart, But I'm saying the general assessment on this fight is that one guy's got no heart, one guy's got no brain. He's like, he walked, dude. That was literally one of the funniest
stormed right
knockouts.
forward. Like that's how you lose against Sam Alvey. Sam Alvey is more than happy to just stand with his back, keep backing up and doing nothing.
He clearly had never watched a Sam Alvey fight,
Yeah.
or he'd realized this guy stands there, looks to counter with the left hand.
Yeah.
So marching forward towards him with both hands down, your chin up in the air, is not going to result good. Also, this, unassuming ginger who's got a body on him like a bag of milk, hits unbelievably hard, man. So you don't want to go down that road, and he did. He's come from a karate background. He's a striker. He wants to go out there. He wants to land those bombs. And he's had a lot of success in full contact karate, and to a lesser extent, basically like a kick version of kickboxing. He comes to MMA. He's got that same style. He's got that power. What happened in the Sam Alvey fight was almost like a brain fart moment, I think. I think he's a very proud guy, and he's a stand-up guy. When you come from one of those traditional backgrounds, someone's like, oh, dude, this guy's a 6th-degree black belt in Taekwondo. A boxer can go out there and clip you with a 2-piece and knock you out. But everybody's talking about how you have 6th-degree black belt in Taekwondo. You're supposed to be so good. You have like an ego built around it. This guy was an awesome striker on paper, but it's full contact karate. It's Sage Northcutt, 300 matches in your career, and you've never been punched square in the face. So when he got hurt early by Sam Alvey, his ego kicked in and was like, that didn't hurt me, and then ran in with his hands down. And then, yeah, it hurt you, and here's a second one that's going to land completely.
For good measure.
Yeah, unguarded shot right in the mouth, boom, knocks him out. So what I'm getting at is he's a striker at heart, and ANKALAEV is a wrestler at heart. He has that Sambo background, but it's mostly Greco-Roman wrestling. He's got great trips. He takes down a guy like this all day long. So I think he gets those takedowns. I think he pounds him up, and I'm not particularly sold on this guy's chin. He got knocked out hard by Alvey, and whereas Alvey has got a tendency to knock guys out pretty decent, and he's got that power. This guy had been hurt with a short shot and then full out knocked out with a clean shot. I don't doubt if he's on the back getting pounded, and ANKALAEV's kind of he's probably so embarrassed. Like, imagine I remember there was like a thread or there was a comment, wasn't my idea, somebody brought it up, but I was like, damn, dude. They're like, yeah, this guy's getting killed when he gets back to Russia. And it's like, maybe that shit was embarrassing. You need to go out here now. They've given you a striker with a suspect chin who has got some massive holes in his game and is here to be defeated. Go out there and take him down, smash him up, make it a spectacle, put your arms up, let people know that you're back on track. It was a fluke loss against Paul Craig. Let's advance your career. Perfect matchup for him. I think he wins. $9,100. If you're going to take Peter Yan, then you can't afford this guy. But, and Peter Yan's very likely to get a first or early second round finish, and ANKALAEV not quite as much. He's probably going to pound away at him for 2 or 3 rounds and then get that finish. Unless he has a pile of takedowns, which I don't think he'll need a pile of takedowns, so he probably doesn't need to take him.
PraChnio get back up.
No,
PraChnio
PraChnio gets taken down, that's it. Like, Bearju is probably a better wrestler than him, and he had no shot. Bearju actually can't wrestle for shit, but you know what I mean? Guys can't wrestle like this guy and Bearju. They get tossed around all day.
Yep.
The one thing is that Bearju was actually a submission artist, and he actually had a triangle that he could throw up. And like the Steven Silers of the world, apparently all you have to do is throw a fucking triangle choke, and you can get a victory over a hot Russian prospect. But Prachnio is not going to throw up a triangle, so I don't have to worry about that. I think ANKALAEV gets the victory, gets back on track.
Jordan Johnson takes on Adam Yandiev. Jordan Johnson is 8,700 and Yandiev is 7,500. Fight being contested at middleweight. And I think that's a good move for Johnson. He kind of likes to rely on his wrestling, but at 205, he wasn't really bigger than his other opponents. So Yandiev looks pretty jacked from the tape I have watched.
Well, he used to fight at 205 as well.
But
so he's coming down.
I think 185, if he can make it safely, I think that's a good spot for Jordan Johnson. 8,700, we know kind of his style of play. It's wrestle heavy, and I think this is a good opponent for him to be taking on, because watching tape on Yandiev, I see a lot of he's usually going for takedowns and he's reversing in scrambles and stuff. And I think that all kind of plays into Jordan Johnson, who has the higher wrestling pedigree, being able to control those situations, get top position. My issue would be, is he going to be passing when he's on top? But that's a risk I'm willing to take at 8,700. I will be rostering a whole bunch of Jordan Johnson. Who do you like in this spot?
Yeah, it's probably a curse for me, especially because we'll talk about Yandiev's social status in Russia. He's a pretty big star, but like Jordan Johnson should not only run this guy. Jordan Johnson has the potential to score a lot of points because Yandiev, if anything, is
strong
guy.
Up.
He's a proudful guy. He's not going to go out there and quit on himself, surely. And he's shit on the ground, man. Like when he's on his back anyways, like you can just style on this guy. And guys like Jordan Johnson that just got pace for days, like that was the style of 205, just a grinder. His last two fights, I didn't think he looked particularly great against Adam Milstead, who is
a heavyweight
coming down to 205. You know, it's a close fight.
Yep.
And prior to that, against Marcel Fortuna. Fortuna is a high-level black belt. Not a guy known for his power, but had the one finish over Anthony Hamilton. And, you know, kind of gave him a pretty shit fight. So, as much as I love Jordan Johnson, MMA lab guy, good credentials, former LFA guy, big swinging Johnson. As much as I like him, there are some issues. But yeah, the way he matches against Yandiev, he probably kills him. The reason why this is kind of a hard fight to love Jordan Johnson all over on, one, we don't know how he'll look at 185 pounds. I would assume a lot better at 205, and then I'd be confident to take him. But Yandiev's story is just a very interesting story. His dad was like some badass judo gangster back in the day that, represented Russia at a high level. And as a result, he ended up becoming like the minister of construction in Ingushetia, Russia. Got a bunch of, contracts, government contracts, opened up a construction company. Very, 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 very wealthy businessman. 2 kids, they take up judo as well, Yandiev being one of them. He takes up judo from a young age. He eventually transitions to MMA. His dad's like unbelievably rich. Like even he himself, he has more money. Yandiev would have more money himself than this entire card put together. Before his last fight 3 years ago, the M1, it was on the M1 show, they played a video package of him with just Lamborghinis with his name just like decaled on the side, and like very wealthy individual. Why he's coming back to MMA, considering he hasn't had a pro fight in 3 years, that's a great question. I'm not entirely sure. UFC wouldn't take a guy that hasn't fought in 3 years out of the blue.
Is this a greasy theory?
His last fight was fixed, so I mean that's a greasy theory on its own, I guess.
Are we leading towards another greasy theory here?
No, I don't know. And it's a tough call. The good in me wants to believe that this shit's not going on, and I'm not saying by no means that this is like fixed. Like I don't know. I'm pretty sure you can get sued for that, right? I mean, I'm not trying to go down that road.
I'm not saying it's fixed, but
yeah. No, I'm just seeing his last fight against Dmitry Voitov. He gets the early takedown. Okay, he's a strong guy. He gets the early takedown. He's patting on Voitov. Most of his other opponents, they pack it in and call it a day. But Voitov sticks around. Voitov reverses. Voitov gets on top. Yandiev muscles out of it. Very little technique, but he muscles out of it. He gets back on Voitov. The guy's so tired, Voitov just rolls him back up. He mounts him, Paul. He's pounding him up and mount. This is fairly early in the first round still. Yandiev is completely gassed out. He's done in. It's over. Voitov inexplicably stands up and walks away. Yandiev stands back up. They walk back towards each other. Yandiev grabs him, throws him to the ground, and puts him in a scarf hold and submits him. That's the end of the fight. That was 3 years ago. He took a lot of public shame for that, and he hasn't fought since. Now, 3 years later, he's coming back. He's still only 30, and he's built like a brick shithouse. And he does have that judo in his back pocket, but the whole situation is fucking weird, man. It's weird. Plus, his cousin got shot up in a nightclub. That's a completely unrelated story. Apparently, there's a clan battle between 2 wealthy Ingushetian families, the Yandievs being one of them, versus a rival family.
Sure.
Kareem Zidane has an excellent write-up on Bloody Elbow. I suggest if you're into stuff like that, go check it out. Kareem Zidane is pretty much the only journalist, in my opinion, only journalist in MMA, real journalist, and he covers some hardcore shit. It's not a lot of people's thing, but read it. It's fantastic work. And it explains the whole background of Yandiev. So let's explain it to what makes sense for guys like us who are looking for the value. He's got no gas tank. He had no gas tank 3 years ago when he was 27 years old. Now, 3 years later, suddenly he's a cardio machine. I'm not buying.
Yeah,
Jordan
sure.
Johnson is the worst type of opponent that they could have given him. The only thing is Johnson wasn't the original opponent. He had a much better original opponent. Johnson's coming as a short notice replacement. But Johnson's known as a cardio machine. He pushes a pace. He keeps going at it. He gets those takedowns. He grinds away at you. So I'm not worried about him gassing out. I'm not worried about Yandiev landing that big shot. It's just a matter of how long it takes for Yandiev to get really tired. Jordan Johnson could be one of those guys that, because he's not a finisher, he could be in for 3 rounds with 8 takedowns completed and a lot of ground transitions and a lot of ground strikes and a couple shitty submission attempts that get you maybe some points here and there, and then ultimately wins a decision and scores a ton.
Yeah.
And at $8,700, price is right for Jordan Johnson.
Yeah, you can fit him in.
So I would go as far as to say this is my play of the week, but there's some dirty cloud going on, and I don't want to Saftic the guy, because one guy on every card's getting Saftic, and it's usually the guy I spend a lot of time endorsing. So we'll see what happens, but Johnson is made to crush a guy like this.
Ramazan EMEEV, 9,300, and Stefan SEKULIC, 6,900. I'm really torn in a sense on this. Trust me. I have EMEEV winning all day long. But, you know, he's looked good in the UFC, but he's kind of a point fighter. He seems very smart, and he wins his fights by being just a better tactician, strategically breaking down his opponent and winning. 59.25 points per fight since he's joined the UFC. Not really a DK score. But Stefan SEKULIC, do you know who one of his coaches is?
Oh, I do know, but I'm going to let you say it.
Bojan Mihaljevic.
And apparently, like, his brother as well. Apparently, there's, like, the Mihaljevic brothers or something.
If you are taking advice from Bojan Mihaljevic, I can't save you, man. There is no way. You know, maybe if he was giving on the regional scene. You're fighting a legitimate Russian fighter, very well-rounded, technical, solid fighter all the way around. What's Bojan going to tell you, man? What is Bojan going to tell you? Bojan always will hold a place dear in my heart.
Of course.
Because that's where I have my Hall of Fame for worst fighter in the UFC. You can't in good faith. Like, watching a little bit of tape on this guy too, like he looks like he's trained by Bojan Mihaljevic, man. Like,
I don't know, dude. I don't think he looked that
I thought he
bad.
looked bad.
I think if you
I thought he looked real bad.
I think if you took that guy...
But maybe I'm obviously biased. Like
Oh, yeah. I think if you took SEKULIC and you put him in Ramazan EMEEV's training environment, and you took Ramazan EMEEV and put him in SEKULIC's training environment, like, I don't think he's that bad of a fighter. I just think he probably isn't getting the best guidance.
I'm avoiding this fight, just for the record, before I hand it off to you. I'm just avoiding this fight on DraftKings.
You're going to avoid it, RZ?
Yeah, I don't want EMEEV. He's just expensive. I'd rather pay up for Jan. I think he has a higher ceiling, probably even a higher floor. And no, thank you. I'm not touching SEKULIC either.
Yeah, see, we'll go greasy theory tinfoil hat on this one, okay? Here's the one for you, okay? I think they say, geez, we're going to Russia. This Ramazan EMEEV guy used to be M1 champion. Nice looking record on him. 2-0 in the UFC. Not the most entertaining guy in the world, but a legitimately talented guy. Let's get this guy over, okay? Because he hasn't finished his last 2 opponents, and dude, when he's fighting guys like Sam Alvey, like, come on, it is what it is. We need him to go out there and get a good finish and look good, and we can market him a little bit better, get something in his highlight reel. He's a legitimate talent. Let's move him up, okay? 205 pounds. Who's the worst guy in the UFC at 205 pounds that he'll easily be able to steamroll? Bojan Mihaljevic. We'll just call Bojan. Bojan, what's going on? He's like, oh, you guys cut me. They're like, oh, we cut you. Is there anybody in the room with you? Like, do you know anybody? They're like, oh yeah, just finished training my prodigy. Like, fuck yeah, we'll sign him. All right.
Sounds great.
Bojan 2.0 in the house. He'll go lose this one, then we'll line him up against some other guy, and he'll lose that one, and then he'll be out of the UFC. Or he'll lose 2, have a weight class drop to 185, so we'll give him 1 more, and then he's out of the UFC. Like I said, I think that there's some type of potential there if he was working at an elite gym over time, but a lot of the time you're just a product of your environment. Yeah. And that's not to say that smaller countries like Serbia or a smaller country like that, that's not to say that they're not going to produce world-class guys. It's going to happen. Look at Guyanese boxing.
They're just years behind
Boxers
other
coming out of
places.
Ghana are fucking on point, man. Their amateur system's pretty legit. Their professional system, good boxers, right? It's just, it's a small, impoverished area. So are they ever going to get to the level of a USA or a Russia or a Ukraine, whatever the case may be? No, probably not. But they're good fighters that are coming out of that region. The problem with Serbia is just they're behind the times, right? The guys that are coming out of Serbia are kickboxers and decent kickboxers. But the other guys, the Madrigod Petsevics of the world, I mean, they're 500 fighters at best. And those are the top representatives. Bojan Vilikovic, he's at American Top Team. He's spending his time in America. Those other guys have tried to make the move over. Guys like this that are staying there and being trained by the likes of Bojan Mahalovic, like what's he really realistically going to tell you? What's he going to show you? I don't necessarily know. Ramazan EMEEV, to me, is just a better version of SEKULIC. He's just kind of better all over. He's not a fantastic striker. He's not a fantastic wrestler. He's a guy that has pretty good fight IQ, knows what he's got to do to win a points battle. And against SEKULIC, he'll throw one punch for every 2 punches, hopefully by EMEEV, and EMEEV will just outpoint him. So for the price point, definitely don't want any Ramazan EMEEV. But who am I picking to win this fight? Most definitely Ramazan EMEEV.
Yeah. 100%. All right, and finally, we got Murtagh DVALISHVILI taking on Terrion Ware. Murtagh DVALISHVILI is one of the favorites in our little challenge of who has the hardest name to pronounce, because I don't even know if I'm saying it right, and this is like his 3rd, 4th fight in the UFC. Well, he's 9,200, and Terrion Ware is 7,000. Muragh's always in close fights, so 9,200 paying all the way up there. That worries me a little bit. Terrion Ware has fought on the regional scene, had some good fights, has given guys guys in the UFC some tough spots as well.
He's never looked bad.
No, he's never looked
he's
bad.
Lost
he's not
fights,
an easy
of
fight.
course, it happens, but he's never looked bad in those fights.
92 is just a little too rich for my blood. I think DVALISHVILI wins. But I've seen people talking about, oh, this guy's got great wrestling and all of that. Just you know what? I just think he's a muscular, superhuman strength for 135 pounds. He's just super strong. And that's what I've seen from his grappling exchanges. Not crisp, pure entries or anything like that, but he'll just grab a hold of you and muscle you around. And yeah, so 9,200, just I don't want any part of it. Terrion Ware, I suppose if you go under the idea of Muragh's usually in pretty close fights, at least at the UFC level.
Goddamn right he is.
Then Terrion becomes cash viable, I think, to really get some savings way down the board. So pick is DVALISHVILI, but I won't be really rostering him at all. Ware is viable, but I don't think he gets the win.
Yeah, DVALISHVILI, it's hard for me to go with him confidently here because I have been bent over his last 2 fights. Frankie Saenz fight, he took him down 11 times and he lost a split decision. Heartbreaking, kills me because I had him. And his last fight against Ricky Simon, he wins the fight. I honestly think they screwed him in that fight because the fight's done, and had he just stood back up and walked over to his corner, they wouldn't have said anything. He tried to stand up, and the ref flattens him out and says, no, man, you're out. Stay there. So he stays there, and now he starts acting the part, and now they call it off. Bullshit. Don't touch him. Let him stand back up on his own, and he would have won. But no, I lose that one too. So now we're looking on Terrion Ware. Does DVALISHVILI win this fight? All day. What's he gonna do this time? Terrion Ware's a serviceable guy. Even when he fought at 145 against Cody Stamann, wrestler, he gives him a fight. Sugar Shane O'Malley, hyped up prospect, gives him a good time. Tom Duquesnoy, damn, this guy's on fire. He's the fireball kid. Damn, close fight. Terrion Ware is a tough guy. Yep. He's been around a long time. He's got a lot of fights. I think 25 pro fights on his record. He's a guy that really earned his way to the UFC. He fought tough guys on the regional scene. He finally got here. He draws 3 tough opponents. He gives a good account of himself. 0-3 fighters don't have jobs in the UFC, but the UFC respects a guy like this that comes to do the dance and does the goddamn salsa, regardless of the fact that he's come up short in his last 3. So you give him another fight, but there's no favors being done here taking on DVALISHVILI. Terrion Ware is a striker. He has a pro boxing background as well. He wants to keep the fight standing. Decent little kicks on him, but predominantly he just wants to outwork you with his punches. He doesn't have a ton of power. I think he knocked out Jared Papazian on the regional scene before signing the UFC, but he's not a big power guy. He's more of a just clean, technical, almost like a bantamweight version of a Justin Ledet. Pick away at you with those strikes. Not great on the ground. Wants to keep striking, but can outpoint guys and give them a tough time. But DVALISHVILI is just way too strong, man. He wants to go in there. He wants to get a hold of you. He wants to toss you to the ground. Frankie Saenz is a former collegiate wrestler. Wrestled at Arizona and wrestled at Northern Colorado. the guy's a good wrestler. He got taken out 11 times against DVALISHVILI. You look at his last fight, Ricky Simon. Yeah, I guess he loses that fight. But Ricky Simon's a good wrestler, dude. And he's great in scrambles as well. DVALISHVILI gets a hold of him. He tosses him to the ground. He's an extremely strong guy. His fight before those two fights, he knocks out Raufeon Stotts in 15 seconds. Stotts is a former NCAA All-American, D1.
Yeah, spinning back fist or whatever.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that there's tricks in the sleeve here. He's a great power wrestler, but he can also smack you with some hot shit if the right opportunity presents itself. Anyways, he's a very strong guy, right? As we see with a lot of these Georgian American guys, is that they're strong power wrestlers. And when we looked at the fight with Diego Sanchez last week, maybe he's giving up some size, and maybe he's giving up some, maybe his chin's not as good, and maybe things. But Diego's way stronger than this guy.
Yep.
And when he got in on the takedowns, a lot of the time they weren't great takedowns, but he was in on them, and he was strong enough to just suck him off the cage, to just pull him up to slam.
He may be too strong to let Terrion Ware get up, which means that he's not going to be passing all that much.
No.
There is the issue.
It's a good issue to bring up. But as we just talked about Terrion Ware, this guy's tough, man. He's durable. He got up against Cody Stamann. He's a guy that's going to move around. He's a guy that's not going to quit at any point in the fight. He'll give you your 15 minutes. The fact is, when he took down Science, who is a wrestler, he took him down 11 times, which means his top control is not on point. If you're taking a guy down multiple times per round, and he just keeps getting back up on you, well, obviously there's an adjustment that needs to be made there. Terrion Ware, maybe not as good as an opponent on the ground, but we talked about his durability. We talked about the fact that he's given tough guys somewhat tough fights, respectable fights. So if DVALISHVILI gets a tough fight out of him and he can score 6 or 7 takedowns, maybe get some ground transition, some significant strikes, and hell, get the decision victory this time and win your first UFC fight, then he could score good enough for the 9,200. It's a stretch, but this is such a chalky card that, like you said earlier, if you're playing 50 lines, you got to try a couple of them with, Prachnio or something.
Yeah.
If you're playing multiple lines, I think it's worth trying a couple of them that have DVALISHVILI in case he goes out there and puts on a wrestling clinic. He's built to wrestle, and there's no denying that Terrion Ware's big kryptonite as far as his MMA career gone has been guys that are stronger than him that can power him to the ground. So the path to victory seems there for DVALISHVILI to get the victory. And this is just a very chalky card. I mean, all the big
top to
favorites.
bottom.
It's just the way it is.
It's
right?
hard finding the lower end.
But as a
like.
quick recap, okay? Because we're talking about DVALISHVILI's 9,200 is expensive. I'm avoiding Ware. The value guys that I would see for me personally is I see Desmond Green at 7,300, a great way to save some money. I see CB Dollaway at $7,800, a good way to save some money, and Jan Blachowicz at 8,000. Not bad at all. Also, Andre Arlovsky, more of a cash game than a GPP because I don't think he gets that finish, whereas the other guys have a potential to get a finish and are good price tags. If you take a couple of these guys, you mix up the right amount of guys. But the problem is with a card like this is if you take Peter Yan, you need to take somebody who is cheap on the back end. Whereas maybe if you can save the money by taking ANKALAEV or taking DVALISHVILI, maybe those couple $100 are what allows you to afford something else that really tie your lineup together and make it the winning lineup. So this will be a tough card, even though on paper it seems to be an easy card.
All right, and finally we got Canelo Alvarez versus Gennady Golovkin 2 taking place on Saturday. Who you got?
I mean,
you're the expert. You're the boxing expert guy here.
Well, we were talking about the home cooking in Russia going down on Saturday, and it just seemed like the last fight was a lot of home cooking. Like I don't know how the fight ended up being a draw. It seemed like Gennady Golovkin put it on him and should have gotten the victory. But I mean, they're both superstars, and the money's in the rematch. It's always been in the rematch. So that's just shady shit to me. I don't love that. So now the second fight, if you say, okay, we got the rematch, we're not doing a trilogy unless something crazy happens here. Just let the fight play out the way it's supposed to play out. Then Triple G should beat him. The thing is that Triple G's not a young cat anymore. The problem with boxing is you've got to get to 30 before anybody knows your name. Yeah. So he's already gotten to a point in his career where he's an established killer. He's one of the pound-for-pound best boxers on the planet. He just doesn't really have the respect. But now he's 33, 34 years old. He's starting to get up there. He's going to turn into a Sergey Kovalev in that you got, or an Andre Ward. I know they fought each other, but you're so fucking good, man, that nobody really wants to fight you, that you get older and then somebody exposes you and it makes it look like your legacy's not all that great. Triple G's getting older and Canelo is getting into that prime of his career. He's also test positive twice for steroids. They say now he's clean. You see pictures of him. Crazy to think that that's an achievable body for somebody who's not doing the gack. It's crazy, but with these big fights, I mean, again, we're talking about being suspect of some of the shady dealings over in Mother Russia. Good old USA sometimes has the old backdoor dealing as well, and I don't like it. But yeah, gun to my head, I got to take Triple G. He seems like the power. Canelo gets hit, that freezes him up. He's a good counterpuncher, but Triple G's a counterpuncher, so he's not going to go out there and make it a gunfight. He's just going to look to do it a little bit better. He's got the power. I think he just beats him over the course of a 12-round decision. Hopefully, wins it by, I'm thinking, a 3-round margin. So,
boom.
That's what I'm going with.
Cody's picks.
Triple G by
Hopefully
distance.
Triple G doesn't get Saftic.
Over 9.5 rounds.
So that more or less wraps it up for us. So remember, put what is the hardest name to pronounce on the card in the comment section with your DK handle. So you can be like James7187 and our boy Nicky Noodles. Be added to the queue to win some bucks. Thanks to Cody Saftic for breaking down all of the fights with me this week. Thanks to Chad Dow. Stock is rising on Chad Dow for being our producer, doing all the sweet cuts behind the cameras there. For both of those guys, I'm Paul Shaughnessy saying goodbye and good luck.
Mayo experience! Experience!